us, they retire us by compulsion and turn us out to clutter up a world that has no place for us. A world does not understand us and that we do not understand. But A-bombs and H-bombs and intercontinental missiles and atomic submarines able to belch a radiant death upon us from below the surface of the sea. These they have perfected and stand ready to use any time the undisciplined temper of some president or prime minister gets sufficiently out of hand. In view of all this, how wise is the man who has made the God of Jacob his hope, and has taken refuge in the rock of ages. He has repudiated a world that can make good only on its threats, and has fled for refuge to the Savior, who waits long before carrying out his threats, but is ready at any moment to fulfill a promise. So, I want to take a look at again to just this question of where do we stand as science and technology are marching and racing ahead. Just make no mistake, they are doing amazing things right now. But I read that article, and I thought, I read the first 2 paragraphs. And by the way, if anybody wants to read it, I've got a link to it. I'll share it with you if you want to go read it for yourself. But within the first 2 paragraphs, I immediately thought there is no way that mankind is going to take this kind of power and use it for good. It's just not going. Yes, they'll use it for some good. Don't get me wrong. But there's no possible way that humanity is just going to step back and go, well, we're going to leave all the evil possibilities of this alone and we're not going to touch it. Like, there's just no way that, at no point in human history have we ever come up with something this powerful and then just succeeded in using it purely for good. Ever. It's never happened. And that's what A.W. Tozer's highlighting. I think he puts it so poignantly. He says, all down through history, mankind has been promising us great things, but the only promise they've ever succeeded in is destruction. It's the only thing they've ever successfully accomplished. So, just for a little more background on that, the rest of this article, I go into great length, like they are literally on the cusp of being able to create life from scratch. I don't think I can overemphasize how crazy this development is.
That's scary.
Now, from scratch, in the same way that joke that I started with, yes, they've got to start with God's dirt. They don't have their own raw materials. But they are literally at the stage where they are capable of taking the things that God has put in this earth and creating entirely new, like they were literally talking about new creatures, bringing back extinct species. Like, anybody watch Jurassic Park when you were a kid? Like, that is no longer the impossible. Like, that's literally the cusp of what we stand on now. Now, how close or how far all of that is up to debate. But there's no doubt that is the direction they are currently headed. Now, with that in mind, I want to go look at Genesis chapter 11 again, because I always go to Genesis 11 when they're discussing these kind of things, because I think it is the most important comparison. I know I've shared it in this church before, and the reason for going over these things isn't because I either want to scare the willies out of you or have you go pick at Stanford University. Like, I want to explain something with my philosophy on this. I don't live in terror and go, okay, we need to shut this all down right now. I look at this thing from an entirely different vantage point, and I view it through the lens of what happened here in Genesis chapter 11 and then a few other passages that we're going to go to. But I just want to start with maybe just a little bit of an insight on how I'm viewing this, and it's this, that I'm convinced we're going to go read the story of Babylon in Genesis 11. That all down through history, when man has gone too far, reached the edge of too far, God has stopped him. That's what's happened. Like, man's predisposition is for self-destruction. Like, it's just, seriously, we take a look in our most recent history, things that are, I'd say, foremost in our mind, if you grew up hearing any history, you definitely heard about World War I, World War II, Korean War didn't get a whole lot of press, Vietnam, but then overarching everything following World War II was the Cold War all the way up into the 90s. And what does World War I, World War II, and the Cold War, what do they all have in common? Increasing levels of mechanization and radical, deadly applications of mankind's greatest advances. World War I, they were fighting it with horses, but it's the first time that airplanes were ever used in combat. And then that's the first time that chemical warfare was deployed. Horrors the world had never seen before. Then they perfected all of those fine arts for World War II, and then by the end of World War II developed the atomic bomb that then was the terror that overshadowed all of the Cold War. through the lens of the Scripture, and that's what I want to go look at today. And I say, something is happening. What that something is that if God had allowed these kind of developments and advancements any sooner in history, there wouldn't be a history here to talk about. We would have wiped ourselves off the face of the earth. The only possible explanation for standing where we stand, in my mind, is that we're getting very near to the end. Like, I don't see how God allows these kind of advancements with the serious threats and dangers that they pose without saying he's about to say the end of it. And I want to go through some passages to highlight that, and I want to do this because I want us to understand these things are developed. I don't want us to run around terrified. I want us to go, when you see these things happening, look up, for your redemption draws nigh. In my mind, that's what I see when I look at this stuff. I see seriously and with great conviction that Jesus Christ's return is approaching with greater speed. Every time I hear about another one of these great advances that's, wow, we're able to do miracles, right? Like, that's what's so crazy about this Stanford research. It opens the door to the miraculous, make no mistake about it. Things that could only be done through prayer and petitioning of God's throne before. Diseases that could only be cured through the laying on of hands and prayer. They will be able to fix. Don't mark my words. They will be able to do it. And along with it, they'll be able to unleash hell such as never been seen. And I look at that and I say then, the answer is that God is beginning to open the door to the end of times. So let's look at the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11, because this is a time when man coordinated together, did astounding things. It says, now the whole earth had one language and one speech, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar, and they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. Now I happen to believe that the Tower of Babel was a literal building in a literal place. But I also believe that this is included here because it has such huge metaphorical applications. So man is building a tower. It's really important. It mentions that they all had one language. They were perfectly coordinated. They were capable of coordinating together on a vast scale in a project of enormous implications. And they said, let us build ourselves a tower up to the heavens so that we can be like God. Sound familiar? Does anybody today in our realm say anything about, like, let's build ourselves a high and mighty tower and we'll be up to the heavens like a God? I mean, I have looked up the quotes. There's a whole bunch of these scientists that absolutely say those literal words. I've got one of the guys that was really early on in this genome research stuff, 30, 40 years ago, that literally said the day is going to come where we're going to be gods. Like, he literally said that in the middle of the interview. So, they're doing this, and it says God comes down. I find that somewhat humorous, right? Like, they're busy building up, and God says, well, remember, what did we read just last week? What? Earth is my footstool?
Yeah.
So God says, well, let me bend over and take a peek at this piddly little project of theirs, okay? I seem like, blow the dust off. Oh, there it is, down there. I mean, I realize God isn't physically that, but it's a mental picture I get, right? Like, we're busy doing what we view to be vast and powerful and amazing things, and God says, all right, I'm going to have to go take a little peek at this project. It says, come down to see the city and the tower which the sons of man have built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. This is really deep. God looks at it and says, they've got the capabilities of doing all kinds of amazing things, and this is what they decide to do with it. Why don't you let that sink in a minute? What's the heavy insinuation? God's not impressed. He looks at it and says they've got all kinds of amazing capabilities. They can do all kinds of wonderful things with the abilities I've given them. And what they decide to do is try and turn themselves into gods. They try to fulfill their own lusts and desires. They could have done anything they chose to with this ability. And here's what they've decided to do. It says, this is what they begin to do. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. I don't think we can grasp the level of significance of that. I am absolutely convinced that when God said that, He foresaw all of the things that are happening on earth today. And he looked at it and said, the time isn't ready. Like, I'm not ready to be done with this Project Earth yet. I am convinced. He looked forward through history and he saw atomic bombs and he saw mustard gas and he saw creating new creatures and viruses and bacteria from scratch. And when he said nothing they choose to do will be withheld from them, I don't think he was just using big flowery words. I think it was literal. I think if God had not done what he did next that we're about to read about, that it'd have been a rapid progression of exactly that. We look at it and we tend to think, well, they're just building a tower with a bunch of money. You don't understand, this is an era in history when people lived to be hundreds of years old, had better air, better food, smarter, wiser, faster. Like, I think we overemphasize our modern abilities and forget that I think we would be just microscopic, intellectual midgets compared to these people, okay? So when it says nothing they choose to do will be withheld from them, I'm convinced all the stuff we're dabbling in now, they'd have gone racing right on past. It says, nothing they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down, and there confuse their language that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. What is it that God did? Language is what's specifically mentioned, but what he did is he broke up their ability to coordinate and communicate. That's what he did there. He said, basically, we cannot allow man to coordinate his efforts on a project of this scale ever again. And if you go look down through history, that's what history is full of, right? When wars and upheavals and clashes and conflicts, it's schisms and fractures, and it's every time you get a big enough group of people together. Probably the most powerful example of that at any point in recorded history is the Roman Empire, right? 1,000-year empire. But eventually, God used it, right? Like there's the Pax Romana, Roman peace that allowed for the gospel, right? It's pretty impressive if you look at it. Like, God allowed the Roman Empire to be built and to become powerful and to govern all of the known world at the time. And they built this amazing road system and aqueducts and did all kinds of stuff, and God used that to spread the gospel. Because without, the Roman Empire, you wouldn't have had Paul traveling from Rome to Jerusalem and everywhere in between sharing the gospel. It was his position as a Roman citizen that allowed him this vast freedom to travel all over and share the gospel. But then ultimately, what happened? Even after 1,000 years, schisms, strife, the whole thing crumbled and just disappeared. Like, all we have left of the Roman Empire at this moment is the weird, twisted spiritual heritage of it that's found in Vatican City, and a whole bunch of old stone monuments scattered all over around the Mediterranean. That's all that's left of it, right? Like, there's nothing, no power left of the Roman Empire. And why is that? It's because of this thing that God did when he said, I'm not going to allow them to coordinate on big, evil, good, whatever you want to think about, I'm not going to let them. So when we look at stuff like what we're discussing here at Stanford University, why is this so important? It's because I see God doing something he's never done in history before, and he's allowing mankind, has been allowing, for quite a while now, allowing mankind to coordinate their efforts. Now, it was lots of schism and warfare, World War I, World War II, but the thing that's followed World War II, and especially starting in about 1996, when the internet started to really take off, was the ability to coordinate on a global scale. I don't think I can overemphasize how huge that is. The internet and something as simple as, I got my phone back there. We've been dealing a bunch with the work that I'm helping with right now with a bunch of Chinese companies. Dealing on electric motors and lasers and all kinds of things that we're needing for the projects we're working on. I had a guy show up the other day, the owner of a Chinese company that builds electric motors. He showed up, he didn't speak a word of English. Everybody pulls their phones out, starts Google Translate. And, we take it for granted, but seriously, 50 years ago, this was like sci-fi crazy land if you'd have said, I'm going to talk into my phone someday, and it's going to translate what I say into Mandarin Chinese, and then that guy's going to talk into Mandarin Chinese, and it's going to talk back to me in English. Do you understand what this means? This means the undoing of what God did at Babel. Now, I can look at that and say, well, we've outsmarted God, but does anybody believe that? I don't believe that. I look at this and say this is only one possible explanation, and that is that God has allowed it. Nobody pulls one over on God, right? Like, when he came down and scrambled in the first place, it's not like we finally found the workaround, the cheat code for how to get around what God does. It's that God has said, all right, I have been holding you back from your best and worst intentions for thousands of years. And now I'm lifting that restraint off from you. And I'm not going to say lifting it off in the sense that he's even saying, okay, you're good to go, have fun now. I would say that he's basically said, I'm done restraining you from the evil that you truly wish to engage in. It's not a blessed kind of, I'm lifting these restraints off. No, it will come with all the most awful consequences you can imagine. Now, I want to take a look at some passages in the Scripture, because enough of the doom and gloom aspect. I'm not here to terrify you. I want us to understand we have got to be grounded in our faith. Because you're going to see things that no generation before has ever seen before. You're going to experience things no generation has ever experienced. That's what I firmly believe. The only thing that is going to be a solid foundation to the days that are coming ahead is going to be God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. We've got to have that as our foundation. So I want to start off in Romans chapter 8. I want to go here to Romans 8, starting in verse 31. I realize I'm jumping in kind of in the middle of a concept that Paul here has had all kinds of things he's said before, and I don't want to rip this out of context, but I can assure you that if Paul was here, he would start off saying exactly what he says in verse 31. What then shall we say to these things? Now, Paul was clearly not sitting there discussing great advances at Stanford University and weapons of ever-increasing destructiveness, but I guarantee you, his answer to everything in the entire world, that's what Romans is all about, the turmoil and the difficulty and the things they were currently facing. His answer to all of that, along with his answer to us today, is this: what then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own Son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? This is the most astounding example I can think of. He doesn't give an example of some great deliverance. You notice that? He doesn't say, well, remember when when the Israelites were trapped on the edge of the Red Sea and Pharaoh's racing down, remember how he parted the sea and let them through? That's not the example he gives. The example he gives is Jesus Christ. That's how he exemplifies the love of God. But then this is really poignant because we're called to walk as Jesus walked. So he's not giving an example that's going to bring total deliverance for us, that's going to get our flesh completely off the hook and we're going to be free of any discomfort. He says, look, God loved you so much, he let Jesus be crucified for your sake. So let that sink in. Is that comforting or not? Comforting to know that God might allow you to go through crucifying experiences for the good of what's to follow. He who did not spare his own Son, but delivered him up for us, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? What does he mean by that? Remember, it says what? That Jesus was seated at the right hand of the Father. It's because he was obedient unto death. He has been elevated to a place of honor above all others, right? That's what Hebrews says. What this is saying is that if we follow in the footsteps of Jesus, we will also receive that reward. This isn't saying like, okay, Jesus took all the hard stuff and now you get all the easy stuff. It's saying he showed the path through the hardship. Who shall bring a charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Who is he who condemns? It is Christ who died and furthermore is also risen, who is even at the right hand of God, who also makes intercession for us. He's saying when you look at the world around you, and it condemns you and attacks you, and I fully expect there are going to be people I'm going to get into conversations with them and say like, I'm not so enthusiastic about the things we're inventing and the places we're headed today, and they're going to be like, well, how can you be such an awful person? This is going to cure all that's bad in the world. And they're like, yeah, it's going to bring in a whole bunch that's worse in the world, too. Like, that's probably not going to be a popular concept when terrible diseases are getting cured and awful problems are getting solved. But it says, who is it who condemns? He just literally, that's kind of an open question. He's not saying Christ is. He's just saying, who brings a condemnation when Jesus Christ is the one that's making intercession on our behalf? Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or peril, or sword? For it is written, for your sake we are killed all day long, we are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Yet in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. I'm going to tell you, this is the firm foundation we have got to get a hold of. It says, nor any other created thing. That's why I found it humorous to start with that allegorical joke, if you want to call it, that I did. And it's because no matter what man does, he is still a created thing, playing with created things. And maybe he's twisting them, maybe he's using them right, but at the end of the day, no matter how unbelievable and unforeseen and crazy something that happens in our world might look, and just mind-blowing, it's still created things. And Paul says, I'm absolutely convinced there is nothing in all of creation that can separate us from the love of Christ. Then I want to go take a look at Psalm 44, because you notice in here, verse 36, it says, as it is written, for your sake we are killed all day long, we are counted as sheep for the slaughter. Has anybody ever gone back and looked at that? I did as I was preparing for this message, and I thought we need to go read, because I had to go through it a couple of times before it started to make sense to me. I'm like, man, this seems kind of dark. And then I realized Psalm 44 is a prophetic psalm. And it is a psalm very much for times of difficulty, times when maybe you're at odds with the culture around you. So Psalm 44, we're going to read this whole psalm together. It says, we have heard with our ears, O God, our fathers have told us the deeds you did in their days, in the days of old. You drove out the nations with your hands, but them you planted. You afflicted the peoples and cast them out. For they did not gain possession of the land by their own sword, nor did their own arm save them, but it was your right hand, your arm, and the light of your countenance, because you favored them. So it starts off with the authors here saying, we've heard about all the amazing things you did, and acknowledging that Israel, when they came in and possessed the land, that they didn't drive out the enemy before them, that it was the God that did it. That everything they experienced, all their blessings, was straight from the hand of God, and no credit to them whatsoever. It was just God did it. So they start off with acknowledging, we recognize this. It says, you are my king, O God, command victories for Jacob. Through you, we will push down our enemies. Through your name we will trample those who rise up against us. For I will not trust in my bow, nor shall my sword save me, but you have saved us from our enemies. And you have put to shame those who hated us. In God we boast all day long and praise your name forever. This all sounds great so far, right? Like, first they talk about how God delivered their ancestors, then they talk about how God's delivered them. I want to suggest a moment that this is very much the experience of anyone who is walking with God, whether it was clear back here in the time of Psalms or whether it's today. That we can also testify to having heard of the great power of God in the past. We can also testify to having witnessed and seen God's power in our lives. And then this next part is also true. This isn't true in a literal sense. It's true in the sense that this is how they felt and this is what they were experiencing. But you have cast us off and put us to shame. And you not go out with our armies. You make us turn back from the enemy, and those who hate us have taken spoil for themselves. You have given us up like sheep intended for food, and have scattered us among the nations. You sell your people for next to nothing, and are not enriched by selling them. You make us a reproach to our neighbors, a scorn and a derision to those who are all around us. You make us a byword among the nations, a shaking of the head among the peoples. My dishonor is continually before me, and the shame of my face has covered me. Because of the voice of him who reproaches and reviles, because of the enemy and the avenger. I want you to remember, Paul quoted from this section when he said, we are killed all day long. He quoted this in Romans. And what I understand now is that Paul read this and said, this is talking about the time to come. When as Christians, we will go out, as lambs among, or what do you say, lambs among doves, or as wolves, and it says you'll be as wise as serpents, as gentle as doves, and that people will try to kill you. That's what Jesus said. That's what he prophesied for us. Paul read this and put a chunk of it in Romans because he said, this is what your experience is going to be like as a Christian in the world. All this has come upon us, but we have not forgotten you, nor have we dwelt falsely with your covenant. Our heart has not turned back, nor have our steps departed from your way, but you have severely broken us in the place of jackals and covered us with the shadow of death. If we had forgotten the name of our God or stretched out our hands to a foreign God, would not God search this out? For he knows the secrets of the heart. Yet for your sake we are killed all day long. We are counted as sheep to the slaughter. There's that section that Paul quoted. Awake, why do you sleep, O Lord? Arise, do not cast us off forever. Why do you hide your face and forget our affliction and our oppression? For our soul is bowed down to the dust, our body clings to the ground. Arise for our help and redeem us for your mercy's sake. Now this sounds, when I go read it all, like a really dark thing for Paul to quote, right? Like I'm like, why is he quoting this? Like there's no joy and happiness, and then we got to put it in the midst of what Paul said. He looked at this, the reason he quoted this in Romans 8, he said this is the reality of what you're going to experience from the outside if you faithfully follow Jesus. And then he combined it with, but none of that matters. Because I'm convinced that neither life, nor death, or principalities, anything on heaven or earth, any created thing can separate us from the love of God. He's just being realistic is what he's being. He's saying there's going to be stuff that's going to be gnarly bad, and you need to prepare yourself mentally and spiritually that that's the reality of existence on this earth. What Paul is doing here is doing his best to not sugarcoat stuff. He's not going to tell you, oh, you're going to have great, you're going to be blessed and prosper, everything's going to be wonderful. He says, no, it's going to be awful as far as your flesh is concerned. Make no mistake about it. But your soul is going to be just fine. Now then, going on, I want to read a section from Jeremiah chapter 10 now. So, I have to tell you just something interesting about this section. As I was praying about the message today, and this isn't something I do very often, so I want to share this. I thought this was really interesting. I was praying, saying, Father, what? And I knew there were some more passages that were supposed to be in here, and I was praying about it. And it was just this morning, I was sitting by the fire, and I was like, Father, there's something missing from this message. And I very clearly felt that I was supposed to go to Jeremiah. And I literally flipped over to Jeremiah, dropped the Bible open, and got to that's it. So, I don't get those kind of nudges very often. And I did not look this passage up. I did not remember this passage. I'm just kind of like, this is one of them that God's like, this is part of this. You have to put this in here. Jeremiah 10, starting verse 1. Hear the word which the Lord speaks to you, O house of Israel. Thus says the Lord, do not learn the way of the Gentiles. What's that mean? Now, this section goes on to talk about idols and idolatry, and we could read it, and we could go, well, that didn't have anything to do with me, like my neighbors don't have idols. You understand, our culture is packed full of idolatry. We worship money, we worship health, we worship power. So I want us to have that clearly and firmly in mind when we read this section. Idolatry is alive and well in our culture and our society. So when he says, do not learn the way of the Gentiles, that's the key to everything that follows here. What he's saying is, do not look at the world around you the way that they look at it. You can't. It says, do not be dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the Gentiles are dismayed at them. For the customs of the peoples are futile, for one cuts a tree from the forest, the work of the hands of the workman with the axe. They decorate it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and hammers, so that it will not topple. They are upright like a palm tree, and they cannot speak. They must be carried because they cannot go by themselves. Do not be afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, nor can they do any good. And this is just as true of the things that mankind in its futility is up to today. They're busy carrying it around, propping it up, making it work. But at its core, what we're being told by God himself through Jeremiah is that the things that man does are powerless to affect anything beyond the here and the now. Inasmuch as there is none like you, O Lord, you are great, and your name is great in might. Who would not fear you, O King of the nations? For this is your rightful due. For among all the wise men of the nations, and in all their kingdoms, there is none like you. But they are altogether dull-hearted and foolish. A wooden idol is a worthless doctrine. Silver is beaten into plates. It's brought from Tarshish, and gold from Upaz. The work of the craftsman and of the hands of the metalsmith. Blue and purple are their clothing. They are all the work of skillful men. It's interesting. You notice this here, blue and purple are their clothing. It's talking about them doctrine. Blue and purple were signs of royalty. So it's talking about they build an idol, and then they wrap it in wealth and power, and it looks amazing from the outside. And it's saying it's still got a dead wooden heart. Like, you can dress it up all you want, but it's still a piece of wood. And silver and gold that some man created. He's just saying, don't be deceived by the external appearances of what mankind is busy creating, because it doesn't matter how pretty it looks. Underneath, it's still the works of man. Goes on. Blue and purple are the clothing. They're all the work of skillful men. But the Lord is the true God. He is the living God and the everlasting King. At his wrath the earth will tremble, and the nations will not be able to endure his indignation. Thus you shall say to them, the gods that have not made the heavens and the earth shall perish from the earth and under these heavens. He who has made the earth by his power, he has established the world by his wisdom, and stretched out the heavens at his discretion. Then he utters his voice, there is a multitude of waters in the heavens, and he causes the vapors to ascend from the ends of the earth. He makes lightning for rain, he brings the wind out of his treasuries. Everyone is dull-hearted without knowledge. Every metalsmith is put to shame by an image, for his molded image is falsehood, and there is no breath in them. They are futile, a work of errors. In the name of their punishment, in the time of their punishment, they shall perish. The portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the maker of all things. When it says the portion of Jacob, it's talking about God, right? Like when it says he's the maker of all things, it's saying the one. Jacob is a metaphor or a stand-in for all those who have chosen to surrender their life to the God of the universe, the creator of all. The portion of Jacob is not like him, for he is the maker of all things, and Israel is the tribe of his inheritance. The Lord of hosts is his name. So as we're busy looking at the world around us, and I'm reading all kinds of articles lately and just looking at it, I really felt like we've got to keep touching on this, because I don't know, I doubt that we personally, I know I don't realize how fast things are changing. By the time you read about it in a common magazine publication, it's long past history, right? Like, we can go back and jump back in history, say 40 years, and it's proven fact as stuff gets declassified that everything the government's doing, government, ours, and others, is way, way ahead of what they release in the civilian sector. I can guarantee you beyond a shadow of doubt that the stuff they're messing with at Stanford University, that they're allowed to tell us about in public. I mean, this isn't some crazy conspiracy theory. I'll send you the articles if you want to read it. Like, this isn't off-the-wall tin hat stuff. It's just, they're matter of fact, like, look, this is amazing. I guarantee you that whatever they're doing that they don't tell us about is way beyond that, right? Like, this kind of stuff only gets out in public information if it's actually the low level, it doesn't matter anymore, level of information. And so what I'm really wanting us to do is to take a deep step back and a deep breath and say, okay, what does this mean to me? And I want to read 2 more passages to wind down today to remind us the real point of all this. I want to go over to Daniel. That no matter what happens in the world, God is king over all. He made all of this, no matter how stunning and amazing. Daniel chapter 12, by the way. What we see looks and how miraculous. At the end of the day, it's still men, just like we read there in Jeremiah, taking trees and silver and gold. Like, that seems physical, literal, but that's what's going on here. We're taking God's stuff, and we're rearranging it, we're compiling it, and we're doing some good stuff, a whole bunch of really bad stuff, and at the end of the day, it's us playing with God's tools. That's what it boils down to. And I want us to never forget that no matter how awesome and powerful and terrifying what man's looking like it's doing, it's no different than back at Babel when God said, well, I'm going to go take a look down there at what those people are playing with. And the day is going to come when God's going to say, enough. So I want to read Daniel, first chunk of Daniel 12 here. So Daniel had been granted many prophecies about the end times. And then he had this. Chapter 12 says, at that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to everlasting shame, and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Does anybody have any question about what point in history we're talking about here? This is Judgment Day. This is it. This is the time in history when God says, enough. It says there'll be a great resurrection. It says some to everlasting judgment and shame, and some to everlasting light. And then it describes this. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament. What's the firmament? That's the vast expanse of stars. Wow. And those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Like, to understand, we've got to have this stuff inside of it. This is what has to be hidden inside of us, that when it starts feeling dark and gloomy and stuff that happens that looks and sounds scary and is, that we can say, I only have one path forward. Like, this has got to be so firmly in your mind. And the best comparison I can think of to this is the kind of training that they put special ops soldiers through. Crazy intense. They pound and pound and pound stuff, and they practice and they practice and they practice. What's the point of all of that? It's so that when they get in a difficult and a tough situation, they just click and revert back to just what's so hardwired in that it doesn't even matter what happens around them. They just do it. And that's a whole nother just crazy level of, like, there's subconscious levels in our brains that are unbelievable what can go on in there. But just, it's so ingrained in them that no matter what happens around them, they just revert to their core programming, if you want to call it that. That's what I want us to have as believers, that we have so firmly embedded ourselves into the truth of God's Word and so firmly embraced that this is the path that I'm called to. That it doesn't matter what happens around us, that we will always revert back to. That's what I want to see us do. Then it says in verse 4, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Remember what I said about God removing the restraint? This is end-time prophecy. This is one of the passages that makes me just shiver when I read it. This is what we are watching happen right now. Knowledge is increasing. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others, one on this riverbank, one on the other. And one said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? Then I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, when he had held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and he swore by him who lives forever, that it should be for a time and times and half a time. And when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. Although I heard, I did not understand. Then I said, my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And I'm going to jump down to verse 12. It says, blessed he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days, but you go your way till the end, for you shall rest and will arise to your inheritance at the end of days. Like, that gives me such a happy, sad feeling when I read that. I think Daniel was told, no, I'm being given this for people to follow you. You're going to go rest. I mean, can you even imagine, like, the angel telling you, like, I'm giving you these things, share this. You're going to rest. You're going to be resurrected. You're going to receive your reward. Like, I can't even imagine being told that by the Archangel Michael in this life, right? Like striving and seeking to serve God and obey Him, and to be told, like, you've done well. You're going to die. You're going to rest with your fathers, and you will be resurrected after all of these things come to pass. But what He's clearly been told for us is that there is stuff coming, and I'm convinced it's being fulfilled now. I want to end now in 2 Peter chapter 3. Perhaps one of the most poignant passages to be found in the New Testament. 2 Peter 3, starting in verse 10. And this really gets back to the absolute core of why I want to keep discussing these things. This absolute truth that we have to have hardwired into us. And I don't want to pound this into your heads. What I want us to have is I want us to have this written on our hearts. Like, if you listen to us and we read this and you're like, I don't feel complete peace. I feel terror when I look at these things. Then it's time to get back on your knees and say, Father, will you please put your Spirit inside of me and equip me and grant assurance of salvation and deliverance inside of you. Like, I'm not telling you, like, go around quoting this to yourself like a mantra that's somehow going to keep, like, this isn't some talisman against evil. This is what has to be inside of you. And the more we read this so that we can look at ourselves in the mirror and say, is this what's inside? Or is there something else that's driving this out? Have I held on to other stuff? Have I not surrendered fully to God's plan for me? 2 Peter 3, starting verse 10. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. I see this, and I know just enough about physics that I think I have a little bit of a grasp of what's going on here. Do you understand that it says God holds all things in His hands by the power of His might? Something that has never been successfully explained is what it is that holds this whole universe together. We've got these terms like things like gravity, and then down at the atomic, subatomic level, we've got all these forces and interactions. They've never been able to see, right? Like, we can see stuff being contained and held in order, but we don't know why. We just know it is. I look at that and I say, that's God holding it together. When it says that the elements are going to burn in fervent heat, do you understand this is talking about total atomic meltdown? When it says the elements will burn with fervent heat, do you understand what it's talking about? Only one thing is necessary for this, and that's for God to take His hands off this thing. Do you understand? Is they're seeking new forms of energy. They're constantly, their biggest trick is how to contain it once they make it, right? like, we're well aware that you can have nuclear meltdowns. I mean, just go read about Chernobyl, right? Like, just one little hiccup and that thing just goes into total self-annihilation. Do you understand? The entire universe is trying to go into total self-annihilation, and God's holding it together. So when it says, the heavens will pass away with a great noise, the elements will melt with fervent heat, that's God just saying, all right, I'm taking my order away from it. Unbelievable cataclysmic destruction. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. So this is foundational truth. It's saying this is what's coming. It doesn't even matter what man does. This is what's coming. There's going to come a day when God says, I'm done. I'm unraveling what I have built. And the only thing that will cross that divide is the thing that God chooses to take across that divide. That's your souls. That's it. Nothing else from this earth is going to survive when God says it's done. So you understand, when we look at research and study and weapons and all the crazy whatever people might be up to, you understand, they're busy playing with God's tools, and God has the delete code for the tools themselves. It says, therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, he's saying, so let's take a step back and say, knowing that that's what's coming, knowing that all of this is going to end, regardless of what man does, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness? We just run in simple logic on this. He's saying, if you know that God's going to say, I'm done with this someday, if you actually believe that, what are you going to do? How are you going to live your life? If you don't believe that, you'll do nothing. If you do believe that, you're all in. And if you're not all in, you should be asking yourself, do I actually believe that that's what comes? Because anything less than all in says I'm lying to myself. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. Share the blessing together this morning. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.